Just 14 kilometers. That's all that separates Europe from Africa. Yet despite all of our engineering marvels, from space stations to underwater tunnels, no bridge has ever connected these two continents. Why? Is it impossible? Or was it never meant to be? For centuries, the Strait of Gibraltar has been more than just a narrow waterway. It's been a frontier between civilizations. From the Roman Empire to the Moors of North Africa, armies have crossed it, cultures have collided, and power has shifted hands across its waves. Today, as you stand on the shores of southern Spain, you can literally see the mountains of Morocco rising from the African coast. And yet, in the 21st century, the age of artificial intelligence, Mars exploration, and megacities, no bridge spans this divide. The question isn't just why not, it's why never. Because buried beneath this simple question lies a story of politics, colonial fear, military secrets, ecological dilemmas, and ancient myths. The Strait of Gibraltar is just 14 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. That's shorter than most daily commutes. In comparison, the bridge between Denmark and Sweden stretches nearly 16 kilometers, and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge spans over 55 kilometers. So why is this tiny gap between continents left untouched? To understand that, we must look back, way back. The Greeks called it the Pillars of Hercules, the edge of the known world. Beyond it was the Atlantic, and legends said that only monsters and gods lived past those waters. The Romans saw Gibraltar as a strategic gate to the empire. To the Islamic caliphates of North Africa, it was a bridge into Europe, a path they used to conquer parts of Spain. In every era, the strait was more than geography. It was a symbol of power. Let's be clear, building a bridge here is difficult, but not impossible. Engineers have studied it since the 19th century. In 1923, Spanish and French engineers proposed massive steel pylons with a series of suspension spans. In the 1970s, during the oil boom, Arab investors explored funding a tunnel beneath the sea, much like the English Channel's Channel. More recently, the European Union and Moroccan governments held talks about a Gibraltar tunnel. But all of these ideas hit the same walls: cost, seismic activity, and politics. The seabed here drops to nearly 900 meters in depth. There are strong ocean currents, tectonic instability, and risk of earthquakes. Building piers on such a deep and dangerous seabed is a feat that no country has dared to fully commit to. Yet with today's tech, it's doable, if the will existed. But here's where it gets controversial. A bridge between Europe and Africa isn't just concrete and steel, it's political dynamite. The Strait of Gibraltar is a highly sensitive migration route. Every year, thousands of Africans attempt to cross into Europe, fleeing poverty, war, or persecution. Spain and the EU already struggle to patrol this narrow sea. Imagine if there were a bridge, a literal road into Europe. Would it be a humanitarian lifeline or a security nightmare? That fear, not engineering, is the real reason no bridge exists. European powers, especially post-colonial ones, have long feared an open corridor that links the African continent to European wealth. Building such a connection would mean facing deep-rooted questions about equality, immigration, and legacy. Believe it or not, there are secret documents from the Cold War era discussing the Gibraltar region as a potential war zone. The US, Britain, and NATO have long used this area as a key military choke point. Any bridge would risk becoming a tactical target. During World War II, Hitler even considered capturing Gibraltar to cut off Britain's Mediterranean access. Spain, which remained neutral, secretly tightened its grip over the region. The post-war colonial era also saw Morocco gain independence. But tensions with Spain remained, especially over the small Spanish enclaves in North Africa like Ceuta and Melilla. A bridge might ignite old conflicts. And perhaps, more importantly, it would force both continents to finally share a highway of history. In 2004, a bold plan was announced. Spain and Morocco agreed to fund a joint feasibility study for a rail tunnel beneath the strait. The proposed tunnel would be 40 kilometers long, with underwater sections using advanced boring technology. The idea, a high-speed rail connecting Tangier to Madrid. But soon, costs skyrocketed, and political pressure mounted. The EU hesitated. Morocco faced internal instability. The project was shelved. Today, it exists only as a few dusty files in government archives. No construction was ever started, but the fact that such a plan was this close to becoming reality shows us the gap isn't physical, it's psychological. Some futurists believe we will one day build a Gibraltar Bridge, and not just for transport. It could become a symbol, a unifying monument like the Eiffel Tower or Statue of Liberty, a declaration that two continents once divided by war, slavery, and colonization can come together. With renewable energy, the bridge could even host solar panels or wind turbines. It could be an ecological marvel. But will it happen? That depends on more than science. It depends on courage, diplomacy, and a willingness to reshape global narratives. A bridge between Europe and Africa would not just move people, it would move history. As the years dragged on, the Gibraltar Bridge dream became less about engineering and more about power. Spain and Morocco, once silent collaborators, now stood on opposing sides of a widening geopolitical chasm. Publicly, the two governments continued to promote unity, but internally, each feared what the bridge would represent: a shift in regional dominance. Spain, dealing with internal pressure from nationalist groups in the European Union, worried the bridge would open floodgates, not just to migrants, but to economic competition. Morocco, on the other hand, saw the bridge as an equalizer, a way to reclaim historical relevance and economic strength in the Mediterranean basin. With politics and turmoil, engineers worked in the background, trying to solve what many called the last impossible megaproject, the Strait of Gibraltar, more than 14 kilometers wide. At its narrowest point, with ocean currents strong enough to sink entire ships, and underwater tectonic activity threatening long-term structural stability. To make matters worse, environmental protection laws governed both European and African coastlines. But innovation didn't stop. A bold proposal emerged from a Swiss-Moroccan joint venture, a floating city platform, midway across the strait, acting as both bridge support and an energy hub powered by wind and sun. But the cost, over $150 billion. The world was watching, and so were the power brokers who wanted it to fail. In early 2024, as part of preliminary seabed mapping, Moroccan geologists made a shocking discovery. Beneath the floor of the strait, ruins an ancient pre-Roman settlement. Carved stones with unknown symbols, sunken columns, and what resembled primitive machines embedded in coral. Speculation ran wild. Was this the fabled Atlantis, or a lost Berber civilization erased from history? Within days, all research was classified. Spain denied the find. Morocco remained silent. But leaked drone footage told another story, a glimpse of something that couldn't be explained. And it reignited centuries-old myths about the true ancient rulers of the Mediterranean. The leaked footage went viral, and suddenly, the Gibraltar Bridge was no longer just an infrastructure dream. Across Africa, people began claiming ownership of the story. This was their bridge, their future. In Senegal, Nigeria, Tunisia, Egypt, rallies were held where students held signs reading "The future begins south." In Europe, however, a darker tone emerged. Far-right media called the bridge an open vein into Europe, warning of mass migration and cultural invasion. In France and Italy, public sentiment turned sharply. News anchors debated whether the bridge would lead to a demographic collapse. But underneath it all, one truth emerged. The bridge had already done what no one expected. It united and divided the world at once. In late 2025, amid growing pressure, the EU issued a sudden suspension of all collaborative funding for the Gibraltar Bridge project. Spanish intelligence cited unacceptable strategic vulnerabilities, and a leaked NATO report showed that the bridge could be used for rapid troop movements, a security nightmare. Morocco responded by initiating plans for an alternative route, a revolutionary underwater maglev tunnel, this time in partnership with China and Turkey. But the dream wasn't dead. In the ashes of a failed joint project rose a new one, the Pan-African Mediterranean Corridor, a blend of sea lanes, floating ports, and smart bridges connecting Africa's west to the European south. Without asking for permission, while the West bickered and stalled, China quietly entered the picture, not with speeches, but with contracts. Chinese state-owned engineering giants began acquiring seabed mapping rights, port development contracts in Tangier, and even quietly purchased land in southern Spain through shell companies. No one noticed, until Chinese survey ships were spotted near the strait, operating round the clock. Reports leaked that China was not interested in one bridge. They were planning an entire maritime gateway from West Africa to Europe, bypassing Gibraltar entirely. Suddenly, the bridge wasn't the centerpiece. It was a pawn in a much larger game. By 2026, a quiet revolution was underway, not of concrete, but of code. Moroccan tech startups, funded by Gulf investors, launched Project Nurnet, a bold initiative to beam high-speed satellite internet across the strait and digitally connect remote African regions to southern Europe. Suddenly, the need for a physical bridge began to blur. What if the first true connection wasn't made of steel, but data? Spanish youth began joining African coding bootcamps online. Trade apps launched in French, Arabic, and Spanish simultaneously. The bridge was being built, just not the way anyone expected. Amid the politics, projects, and profits, one movement emerged that no government could control: the People's Bridge. It wasn't made of iron or AI, it was made of stories, culture, music, and art. A viral digital campaign called We Cross Together sparked a wave of cultural exchange, Algerian rappers collaborating with Spanish flamenco artists, joint documentaries between Berber elders and Andalusian historians, and African-European youth co-hosting podcasts about shared heritage. For the first time in modern memory, people weren't waiting for governments to connect them. They were doing it themselves. By late 2026, strange patterns began surfacing on global financial networks. Cryptic transactions linking Tangier, Dubai, Barcelona, and Shanghai. Intelligence analysts suspected more than just business. Something was being built, off-grid, off-record, and off-the-books. Whispers of a shadow corridor emerged. A digital and logistical route, bypassing traditional borders and oversight. Cargo containers fitted with server farms, solar rigs disguised as floating buoys, and undersea nodes transmitting encrypted signals across the strait. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just infrastructure anymore. It was sovereignty being redrawn in real time. Maps were no longer drawn with ink and treaties, but with fiber optics, data pulses, and untraceable blockchain trails. But amidst this rising complexity, one question began haunting global leaders, technologists and ordinary people alike. Who really owns the bridge now? Not the engineers, not the governments, maybe not even the nations. Was it the corporations laying cables in the dark? The people exchanging stories across digital borders? Or was it something else entirely? A new kind of civilization forming at the crossroads of old empires and emerging dreams. The Gibraltar Bridge was no longer just a structure. It had become a mirror that showed each nation not what it was, but what it feared, what it hoped, and what it could become. So maybe the Gibraltar Bridge will never rise from the sea. Maybe politicians will argue, and engineers will hesitate. But the truth is, the real bridge was never about stone and steel. It was about will. The will to connect to continents. It was built in whispers, in waves, in wireless signals, and in the hearts of those who believed connection could defeat fear. So in the end, maybe the bridge was never about concrete or cables. Maybe it was about connection itself. From myth to machine, from conflict to cooperation, the Strait of Gibraltar became more than a gap to be crossed. It became a test of vision, of unity, of humanity itself. And as the sun rises over the waters where continents meet, one truth remains unshaken. The future doesn't cross the bridge. The future is the bridge. If this hidden chapter of history intrigued you, remember, behind every empire lies a story, often lost to time. To uncover more forgotten truths like this, subscribe, follow, and share our channel, Legacy of Nations. Because here, we don't just tell history. We reveal the secrets time tried to bury.